Before reading any of these stories, I would like to thank the authors for sharing them with me. And of course, a thank you to you as well, my dear viewer. Please enjoy. The year is 1983. My best friend Linda was going to be home alone for the weekend, so she invited me to sleep over and two of her other friends to hang out. It was a fun night. We drank, listened to music, and chatted the hours away. I wish this day was only just a fond memory, not one that will still haunt me many years later. As the night stretched into early morning, Linda's other two friends were ready for departure. We said our goodbyes and shared a few laughs before they left, leaving just us two in the house. Now alone, the both of us ready for bed. Linda went ahead to lock up the house, and she brought her wired rotary phone into the bedroom. We then turned off all the lights, and it was so dark that I remember stumbling on something because I could hardly make out anything with the low ambient lighting coming from the outside window. Linda's bedroom was relatively small. She had a bunk bed to get the most out of the limited space, so I climbed to the top bunk while she was in the bottom bunk. Roughly 10 minutes laying in bed, all of a sudden, I started hearing faint footsteps on the roof of the house. I was a bit skeptical if they were a person with how quiet they were, but they slowly started getting louder, and eventually I heard them sounding as if they were right above me, as if someone was pacing around impatiently. I asked Linda if she could hear the footsteps too, and she brushed it off and stated it was just merely a cat. But as she said this, the footsteps only grew even louder. I was frightened and not wanting to be alone, I decided to climb down to join Linda in her bunk bed. Sensing my unease and hearing the loud footsteps above us, she, too, grew worried. She told me to reach over and grab the phone on the floor, and as I did, the light from the hallway poured into our room from the large gap on the bottom of the doorway. We were both confused and scared as the light turned on all by itself, while the footsteps were still going on above us. We both froze to observe the light as it began to repeatedly flicker off and on. No one could have possibly entered the house without forcing themselves in, and if they did, we would have heard the attempts for sure. Our thoughts were interrupted by a loud metallic creaking. Initially confused, we were horrified once we understood the noise. The door handle was shifting and began shaking violently, trying to open the locked door, and when that failed, loud scratches were heard on the door itself as whatever it was desperately trying to enter our bedroom. Linda took the phone from my grasp and dialed 911 to call the police for help, and she tried her best to tell the operator what we were hearing and experiencing. We were both frightened and holding on to each other for dear life, as we thought this was the end. Within 15 minutes of calling the police, we heard a helicopter and loud knocking on the front door. Like a flip of a switch, the noises stopped completely. The presence, or whatever it was, left us. We were both too frightened to move, as we didn't know what to expect if we opened the bedroom door. Eventually, I hesitantly unlocked it and opened the door, and we both bolted to the police waiting at our front door. They entered the house to check for any intruders, any evidence of a break-in, but they concluded that there were no signs of anyone. Part of me wishes I went back to check the door for any scratches or any evidence I could find, but I'm glad I didn't, as either outcome would have been equally terrifying to me. Something was following me in the woods. I'm from Australia, and I've always been drawn to the outdoors. Hiking and exploring nature are my escape. But living in a country where a pile of leaves can easily hide a venomous snake, I'm always alert and cautious. I'm a bit of a skeptic when it comes to the supernatural, but I've always believed there are things beyond our understanding. This all happened when I was 17 years old, during the first COVID lockdown in 2020. I couldn't stand being cooped up indoors any longer. I decided to take a weekend trip to the Blue Mountains, a rugged wilderness near Sydney, to spend an afternoon on a familiar trail and what time I could outside. I packed a light but smart water, snacks, a first aid kit, and a EPIRB in case things went south. The trail was one I hiked a couple times before, winding through eucalyptus forests and rocky outcrops, with the hum of cicadas and birdsong as a constant backdrop. About roughly an hour in, I heard sticks snapping just off the path ahead. I assumed it was just another hiker who dropped something or wandered off to check out whatever interested them. I kept going, and eventually I reached the spot where the sounds were coming from. I found no one. No footprints, no broken branches, nothing. A sense of unease crept up my spine, but I shook it off and continued. Checking my watch, I realized it was getting late, so I turned back. As I passed the same area where I heard the sounds come from earlier, something felt off. The birds, whose chatter had filled the air all afternoon, fell silent. The forest held its breath. I stopped, scanning the trees, when I heard it. Slow, deliberate cracking, like twigs breaking underfoot. My heart thudded, and I bolted, my boots pounding the dirt trail. When I reached my car, I fumbled with the keys, locked myself in, and stared down the path, half expecting a creature from some horror movie to burst through the trees. Nothing came. The silence was deafening. Then, as if a switch had flipped, the birds started singing again, so sudden and loud it nearly stopped my heart. I started the car and peeled out, the trail rapidly shrinking in my rearview mirror. The next day I just couldn't shake the experience. I wanted some closure and felt compelled to go back. I retraced my steps to the clearing, searching for any sign of what I heard. Animal tracks, a broken branch, anything. I spotted a red-bellied black snake slithering into the underbrush and a jump-scaring lace monitor that scurried across the path. But nothing here explained the sounds from the day before. After nearly an hour of combing the area, I reached a bend in the trail where the trees grew denser, their shadows pooling on the ground. Goosebumps prickled my arms, and I froze. I felt watched, like eyes were boring into my very soul from the undergrowth, studying me with ill intent. The forest went quiet again, just like before. The air suddenly felt thick, oppressive, like I was choking on it. Then came the sound, a low, guttural noise, like bones cracking or something wet and heavy gurgling in the shadows. My body locked up, paralyzed by fear, my eyes fixed on the bend. The underbrush rustled, and that snapped me out of it. I ran faster than the day before, my breath ragged. Behind me, I heard movement, branches snapping, leaves shifting, as if something was keeping pace with me, hidden in the foliage. I glanced back, with my heart in my throat. I saw only the green blur of ferns and shrubs swaying, no figure in sight. When I reached my car, I dove inside, started the engine and floored it, nearly swerving off the road and crashing in my haste to escape whatever it was. I haven't returned to that trail since. I barely spoke about it either. It sounds too wild, too unexplainable even to me. I'm still trying to make sense of it all. I still don't know what happened to me that night. Sleep paralysis or something way darker. This happened to me when I was around 17, and at that time, I was really involved in church and part of a youth group in my local Christian community. Like in many churches, they'd occasionally invite pastors or ministries from other places to hold special events. One time, they invited a ministry from another state for a weekend of miracles, healings, and deliverance. But what really stood out to me was this one guy they brought along. He had a testimony that honestly felt straight out of a horror movie. He claimed that he had once been deeply involved in satanic practices, even getting close to becoming a kind of priest for a group like that. According to him, just before completing a ritual that involved a sacrifice, he had a powerful encounter with God that made him leave that life behind. But the really disturbing part was what he said came after. He talked about being tormented for years, waking up literally stuck to the wall with his chest scratched and bleeding, and how during exorcisms demons would speak through other people and call him by his full name, begging him to come back. As wild as it sounds, he shared all of this with a dead serious tone and this heavy stare that honestly made you feel like something was still with him. During the event, a lot of people were saying they got healed and delivered from things, but the whole atmosphere was intense, and being near that guy felt strange, like there was some sort of energy hanging around them that made you feel uncomfortable in a way you just couldn't explain. A couple nights after the event, I was in my room around 9 p.m., just lying in bed with the lights off, getting ready for sleep. Everything was normal until I heard something super clear in my right ear. The sound of pages being blown violently by the wind. Suddenly, that sound filled the entire room, and then I wasn't in my room anymore. I found myself standing in what looked like a forest, surrounded by lit candles arranged in a circle. I was in the middle. Then slowly these people started to appear, wearing all black robes with their faces covered. The last one to show up was holding a huge book, like ancient and almost alive looking. He placed it on a stand and started reading it out loud in some language I couldn't understand. But it felt wrong, really wrong. I was frozen in fear. All I could think to do was pray as hard as I could. I begged God to get me out of there. And then this strong wind started blowing, knocking over the candles one by one. The pages of the book began to tear out and catch fire in the air. The next thing I knew, I was back in my bed. But I wasn't in the same position I'd fallen asleep in. I was completely paralyzed, couldn't move a muscle, and it felt like something was still in the room with me. In Mexico, where I'm from, we have a name for this. Se te subió el muerto, which means the dead sat on you. It's what people call sleep paralysis, because it feels like a heavy presence is sitting on your chest, keeping you from moving. That was the only time in my life I have ever experienced it, and it felt like something came back with me. Like whatever I saw just wasn't a dream. After maybe 15 seconds, which felt like longer, I suddenly felt this thing leave my body, and I could finally move again. I was sweating and completely freaked out. I didn't sleep properly for days. I know how insane this sounds. It's like something straight out of fiction, but it's 100% real, and I experienced it. I know it happened to me.